Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. If you live in Radnor Township, I think you'd agree that Radnor has done a pretty good job of preserving and maintaining open space residents can enjoy year-round. The township boasts 29 parks and recreational facilities that total over 400 acres. For more than 40 years, one of the township's environmental treasures has been the Willows Park, a 47-acre estate purchased by Radnor Township from the Zantzinger family in 1973. At the end of a long, winding driveway at the top of a hill is a beautiful three-story mansion, the Willows Mansion, built in 1910, which provides a sweeping panorama of tall, stately trees, beautiful lake, and beautiful plantings. For thousands of visitors every year, the Willows offers a combination of quiet elegance and unspoiled beauty. Today, the Willows Mansion is at the center of a debate over the future and the use of the Willows Mansion. The most recent proposal is to lease the mansion and some of the surrounding grounds to a private nursery school for 15 years. The issue has produced two factions: those who oppose the proposal to lease the mansion to a private commercial enterprise, and those who support the proposal because they believe it would be good for the township, ostensibly because of rental income that the lease would provide. My guest today is Commissioner Don Curley of the 6th Ward. The Willows Park is in the 6th Ward, so that this is at the top of his agenda. Welcome, Commissioner Curley, to 30 Minutes.
Thanks for having me.
This is a thorny issue, and I must disclose that I live in the 6th Ward near Willows Park, so I have more than a passing interest in the final resolution. That is what the Board of Commissioners will decide to either approve or reject the proposal to lease the property to a private enterprise, a private school, or for that matter to any commercial enterprise that would change the character of the park, increase significantly the amount of traffic into and out of the park 5 days a week, as well as the surrounding highways, I shouldn't call them highways, roadways, that are now choked with traffic, particularly during peak traffic hours in that neighborhood. Don, what's the history of the Willows?
Sure. Well, you identified how we came to own it,
yeah.
And the building is part of it. The mansion is part of it. For a long time, we operated it as a catering facility. There were lots of great events at it,
yes.
And the township did its best to. I don't know that it turned a profit or even tried to turn a profit, but it certainly covered cost and used it as a revenue center. Over time, that became increasingly difficult as the building became increasingly difficult to operate.
Yes.
And then as operating a catering facility is a professional endeavor, so that also made the operation difficult. So over time, the building came into disrepair. It requires funds for upkeep, for maintenance, and the staff made a decision a few years back. Actually, the staff presented it to us. The Board of Commissioners agreed it has to cut one way or another. It can't keep limping along like this. At that point, we made a determination to go out and try to find some type of arrangement that would change the use and make it a better use and more cost-effective use.
How long have you been on the board?
I'm in my 7th year.
Okay, so you've witnessed to, participated in some of the debates and discussion about other proposals.
Yes, we've had, we did something similar with Agnes Irwin. We made an arrangement with them probably 5 or 6 years ago. Different circumstance. That was a park, that was a ball field that they wanted to rent from us as a ball field. We did that. This one's a little different in that it's a park to be rented as a school. We also had 2 previous iterations, both catering facilities where the township negotiated with an entity to operate a catering facility out of the Willows.
And those proposals went nowhere?
Yes. First, they weren't unanimously supported. I was opposed to them for the same reasons that I'm opposed to. And I will say that this is a better use than a catering facility, meaning that all the things that are wrong with putting a commercial entity into a park are much worse when that commercial entity is a catering facility. But neither of those two could come to fruition. They sort of just couldn't get past the details of generating enough money to do what you had to do and protecting the township's
Then
interest.
there was another proposal to sell off part of the property and develop it?
Yes, there were. So initially, what we did is we issued RFPs, and they were just general RFPs for ideas.
When was that?
That I'm going to guess that
Approximately.
was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So we've been at this. This may be new. You know, if you're just hearing it now,
Yes.
we've been at it for 3, 4 years, 5 years. But we issued the RFP. The RFP had some things that we want for the township, but it was open to uses. And we got a variety of uses. Some were impractical, some were great ideas, but probably couldn't come to fruition. One of them was a residential alternative, which would be essentially to sell off a
Right.
portion of the Willows and then use those proceeds to invest in the building. None of the commissioners were supportive of that. The only proposals that had traction were the catering proposals. There were 2 of them. We attempted to, or we negotiated with one of the caterers. They picked one. The negotiations probably carried on for upwards of a year, and then they just couldn't get through the details. Then there was another round where we went to the second caterer, again another round of details, and we just couldn't get past the details. So probably November of 2015, that's when the second caterer dropped out. The township made its sort of final determination that it would no longer negotiate with that caterer, and this proposal came forward.
Were those proposals straight rental? The township would lease the property, or was there a
they
revenue
were
share of some kind?
there were details. There was some rental. There was some revenue share. There was some investment in the building. There was some maintenance. So I would say the form was similar in that the township wants to protect the building and see some cash. The details obviously change depending upon the use.
Okay. What is the condition of the mansion now? Are there environmental issues there? It's an old building,
Yes.
100 years old, more than 100.
I'm not sure that, yeah, that's such a complex question. I can't really answer. I don't know the full extent. I would just say there are issues. It's when you go into it, it's still a very beautiful building. It's still
Yes.
a beautiful old home. I would say my assessment of it, the central issue is that it used to be a home, and when you take a home and you try to have even our activities in it, it is not a perfect fit, and you have issues with zoning and code and things of that
Yes.
sort. So, you have a bathroom, you have a restroom. Well, that's not a restroom that is suitable for
Yes.
for a gathering of 60 or 70 people, and so sometimes you
Or
have tension
possibly a
like that.
school.
Yeah, so you have those kinds of tensions that are in the building that would have to be, if the building is going to be used in a modern way, it's going to require some investment.
So you don't know if, because of its age, there's any asbestos or lead paint or
I don't know that.
corroded
I would assume it
water
has all
lines
the
and so on?
things that old buildings have,
Yeah, I
but
just don't know
the
when it
details.
was last renovated, because I'm
Yeah.
sure it must have been renovated over the past 100 years. It must have been, or it'd be falling down.
Yes. So I don't know the details, those particular details. Those are some of the things that have to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
Even if one thinks this is a good idea, those kinds of details have to be fleshed out, and right now they remain to be addressed.
This has become a heated debate.
Yes, it
I
has.
attended one of the commissioners' meetings, the board meetings, where the meeting was quite civil, as the board pointed out. There were very strong arguments presented on both sides, and I think a respect for everybody's opinion. And that's good. That's the way it should be. Nonetheless, it is a heated debate, and there are very strong feelings on both sides. To recount what I said before, the proponents of the proposal to lease the building at what it seems to me would be a subsidized rate. I mean, the building has to be worth more than the numbers I've seen anyway. I'm not a realtor, but again, even the suspension for 2 years, according to the proposal I saw, of paying any rent, so it'd be rent-free for 2 years, my understanding from what I read, seems like an extraordinary concession to anyone who would use the facility. But the proponents say that to have, again, from what I understand, up to 200 children, small children, nursing school, on the property would be good for the township, good for the property, good use of the property. And wouldn't it be nice to know that the township is encouraging the development of these young minds, et cetera, et cetera. The opponents, many of the people I know, are concerned about the traffic in the park, not just in the area, but the traffic in the park. The prospect of having, since there would be no busing, as I understand it, up to 200 cars or so a day in the park, dropping kids off out of the park, back to pick up the kids, out of the park again, at egress and exit near two very, very busy intersections, Newtown Road and what's the other road, Brook?
Yes.
Brook, yeah. And at that bridge, which was probably built for horse and carriage, near the entrance to the park. At any rate, all of those issues, nothing to do, no one is opposing, so far as I know, the school or questioning the good work the school does. The issue, it seems to me, is coming down to, does a couple of things. Does the township, the Board of Commissioners, have the right to lease a public property to a private commercial enterprise of any kind? And if they do, is this the best use of that property? Because the argument seems to be it's because of the revenue. Well, there just isn't enough revenue to justify it.
Yeah.
Because there was some conversation at the last meeting again, someone suggested that maybe the roads in the park would have to be widened. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah. Well, those details, obviously, the detail of how wide the road should be, that hasn't been addressed yet. So, a couple of items. So, one, you talked about the value, the market rate of it,
Right.
and
I don't know
what the market rate is. We have a group that will advise us. We have a CARFAC group. I'm confident that they will identify the market rate. I'm confident that we will ask the market rate. So, there is the risk of subsidy, and we have to make sure that we shouldn't be subsidizing, no matter how honorable the group is.
Yes.
We shouldn't be subsidizing them. I'm actually confident that we will be able to address that issue. Regarding whether it's legal. So first, the general question of whether a township can lease a facility to a private entity. The answer is yes. We do that all the time. We rent our gyms for softball leagues. Little League is a private entity.
Yep.
We rent the field to Little League. So the general question is yes. The particular question is two particular questions. One is, are we allowed to rent the Willows to a school, for a commercial activity of a school? I think there's uncertainty in that. The deed says something to the effect of park, recreation, and facilities. And what we have to determine is what's the meaning of facilities. If you take a broad view of facilities, you could put anything there. You could put a manufacturing facility, any commercial facility. If you take a narrow view, that it's some kind of facility that supports parks, then this would be illegal or unlawful.
Right.
So I would put that one in the category of that needs further attention, because it is not clear. It's not clear to me, as someone who likely will be a decision maker, one of the 7 votes. It's not clear to me that we have the legal authority to do it.
Are the same issues regarding the mansion, do they pertain to the cottage as well? The cottage is sitting empty, isn't it?
Yes, the same. There would be no distinction between renting the two entities.
And the township did renovate that building.
Yes, that's renovated to some degree. There's been some investment in that building.
Yeah. Was it not used for administrative offices or something for a while, or wasn't it going to be, the cottage?
Yeah, there had been several plans for that, and I'm not sure any of those have really come to fruition either.
So from your standpoint, what are the viable options the township has with regard to the future and the use of the mansion in particular?
Okay, so I would even say, before you say what are the uses of the mansion, I think we got to step back and make the much broader. The much broader issue is, what is it that we want to do with our parks? Why do we have parks? Do the parks have to? Do they have to survive cost benefit? Do they have to generate revenue? We recently had an initiative we have a lease arrangement with the school district for North Wayne Field, which is essentially a pocket park in a densely populated area. I would view it as very valuable. We had an arrangement or a proposal by some to give that back to the township. And the logic of the advocates of, or excuse me, give it back to the school district. The logic of that position to those who supported it was that the park isn't serving enough utility for us, and we shouldn't have it. And the board rejected that 4-2. This is that same question to me. What is do we need to put commercial, or do we want to have commercial facilities? What's the purpose of the park? For me, the purpose of the Willows, the function of the Willows is just the tranquility that it gives us.
Yes.
It's an oasis. It's a place away from the road network. It's a place away from the car network and things of that sort. It exists for its own sake. So I am very hesitant to allow commercial activities to encroach into the parks. And quite frankly, that's not just parks in the 6th Ward. It's the same, the parks in Garrett Hill, the parks that there might be pressure to take, wow, these are very valuable commercial entities, commercial properties. Let's put a commercial activity in these parks that we've had for 50, 60, 70 years. And I'm generally going to resist that. So then the next question is, well, if that's the case, what is it that we can do with the Willows Mansion? So no action isn't great. It could limp along like it currently does. There's been an all residential component, or an all residential proposal that would have no impact, or very little impact on the park. So it's somebody like rent the facility to a person, let the person invest in it, and live there.
Right.
I don't think the township would support that. I don't think the township wants to rent that building to a private citizen to live there. Another option would be just for the township to invest the money in it. If the township decides that this is an asset and it should keep, then the township should invest money into it. So one of the counter arguments, people say, well, there's no money to do that. There isn't the priority to do it, meaning that the township has spent a tremendous amount of money investing in parks, and it has chosen not to invest in the building. If the building is valuable, then the township can invest in the building itself. And then I would say the last option would be a Chanticleer-like option that a local artist presented a rendering. I don't know if you're familiar with Chanticleer, but there are at least two buildings that were selectively taken down, remnants of the building, and there are additions to the building too. But they're there as a kind of like museum pieces to what life would have been like at the time when the building was in operation. So that has negatives and positives. The negatives, a lot of people don't want to see the building taken down. The positive is that it would be 100% township use.
Right.
And many of the things that the current proposals would not preserve, the selective demolition would actually preserve. So that's probably the array of proposals that are before us right now.
There is, and every one of them has issues.
Yes.
It's not an easy decision, nor is this one an easy call, because there's so much emotionalism swirling around this. So the parents of the children who are in the school, and the folks in the surrounding areas who are concerned about use. How does the board, and you must go through this all the time, but how does the board somehow sift through all of the emotionalism, all of the sentiment, to get to a fact-based decision?
Sure. Probably the answer to that is time, meaning that this is my history with us here in Radnor and in my other jobs that involve government is that if everybody says that's a great idea, let's make a decision on Monday, you will not get the same decision if you say that's a great idea, let's make that decision a month from Monday. So that's the way this unfolded. The proposal was presented. It seemed like a great idea to a lot of people. As time, ideas were fleshed out, counter arguments were raised, and now I think there's some attention to detail that we didn't have a month ago that we're trying to address. So that's really it. The township has to take the time necessary to sift through all the items and then make its decision accordingly.
And Don, this is just one thorny issue. You hold a full-time job. You're married, kids. You have other interests, I'm sure.
I do. Rumor
how,
has it.
How do you how do you find time? You and your
Yeah.
colleagues. How
Well,
do you find the time to do all that
to
has
a
to be
person,
done?
I respect every one of them because I know how
Absolutely,
much
yeah.
time they are,
Yes.
and all the predecessors. I know how much time each of them has put into it, and everybody is just in it for the good of Radnor. But it's like anything else. I think everyone listening probably has that same issue. There just isn't enough time in the
Yes.
day to do the things that you feel that need to be done. So you do the best
How
you
many
can to
hours
get
a
through.
week, on average, do you put in on township? No, 6 ward. I guess there are two distinctions: township-wide business
slow week
and
could
ward
be
business.
a slow week could be 2 to 5 hours. A busy week could be 20 to some hours a week.
Yeah.
You have it can be and it's fun too. It's
No, I
not
understand.
work like you go to your office and you sit
Yeah.
and you have your head in a book.
Yeah.
It's meeting people. It's coming here, having interviews like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one commissioner referred to it as the most enjoyable headache. So it can be like that at times.
Yeah. I'm not sure what more can be said about this particular. Are there other issues in the 6th Ward that are as thorny as this, that keep you awake at night? Or are all other issues rather tranquil, easy to manage?
For better or for worse, I am not kept awake by Radnor Township issues at night. These are important issues and we're addressing them. But you mentioned earlier about the civility of it,
Yes.
and this is when Thomas Jefferson wrote about local government and its merit. This is sort of what he was talking about. So we're addressing them. The other hot issue in the 6th Ward, I would say, involves cell coverage. It also it also involves
Boy,
the Willows.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's
Where to put that tower?
Yes, and
Yeah.
so some want a tower, some don't want a tower. I mean, if 15 minutes ago I talked about
Yes.
not wanting to put cell towers in beautiful parks, pristine
Right.
parks, so and then that issue kind of has to step back also. That this issue was presented to some as you all need cell towers, and it should have been presented as you all need cell service.
Yes.
And cell towers is just one of the ways that you can get cell service.
I didn't know that.
We do this in government a lot. If we skip step 2, 3, and 4, we go from 1 to 5. So this argument was presented as go out and get us cell towers, and one of the things that we have to do is let's change this to how do we go out and get cell service.
I don't think most people realize that. I mean, I always thought you needed a tower.
Well, that's what we're going to have to find out because, so we redistricted last year, and no one, I had never taught, so this part of town is new for me to represent. So this was not an issue never presented to me. In my 4 years, 5 years prior to that, no one had spoken to me about it. I sent out an email distribution to my new represented area, and I probably had 10 or 15 people come back to me saying, yes, the cell towers are, or the cell service is an
only 10 or
issue.
15? Why, that surprises me. I have to go to the top of my driveway, turn 10 degrees in a strong wind to try to get a signal.
Right, so that's what we have to do is look at whether there's a way that we can provide, or does the township have the capability to augment that cell service without cell towers in a pristine part of the town?
Of your job, the board's job, the township's job, is education. Well, firstly, engaging enough people in government, coming to the meetings and so on, which for the most part are sparsely attended, at least from what I've seen. And then helping people understand the issues, just as you're doing now with the tower, for example. As I said, I had no idea that there even might be an alternative to one of those big ugly towers up in the sky. Most people just don't take the time to think about, become educated in, so they can make informed decisions or have informed opinions.
And that's not a fault of anyone. So one of the most rewarding things that has been said to me as commissioner is the person who said something to the effect of, I don't have time to pay attention to the details. I have a job. I have kids. I just can't. But that's why I have you, and I'm glad you're paying attention to the details. So to a man and a woman, that we are paying attention to the details. We're not always going to agree on how to resolve them, but we are paying attention to the details.
I mentioned at the top that Radnor has over 400 acres of open space, and does that include what is now the partial of the farm that will become part? Isn't the township buying additional space?
Yes, the township. I don't know whether that number. I get a lot of numbers in my head in this job, so I don't know whether that number includes the most recent purchase or not.
I pulled that off the website, and I assume it had not been refreshed. So I guess it will be more than 400 with the addition of what is it that the township is buying from Hydrogen?
My recollection is it's something on the order of 30 acres.
30 acres, yeah. And there'll be a trail. A walking trail?
Yes, I don't believe that those details have been fleshed out exactly,
but that's the
concept,
Yeah. You've been at this a while now. Radnor is fortunate in many ways with the resources it has and so on. As you and your colleagues look out over the next 3 to 5 years, what issues do you see emerging in the township?
Well, I hate to sound, this is not glamorous, but pensions and health care they're the Achilles heel of local government.
Yes.
So they are on a glide slope to disaster, and in between here and disaster you have problems.
Right.
So we are doing everything we can to manage them, and our unions have helped, meaning that we have our employees have helped. Our employees have recognized this and have helped us negotiate better agreements. The staff has recognized this from the technical perspective. We have citizens involved in it. So we are doing a lot to improve it, but that's been from the beginning, from 6 years ago.
Yes.
Now, remember, when I took office, it was shortly after the economic downturn. So these problems were looming larger because we also had our day-to-day balance sheet was not as strong as it is now. The overall improvement in the economy has improved our day-to-day operations, and then we've made some significant improvements on the long-term obligations. But those long-term obligations remain staggering, and are not to the point that we can make immediate tactical decisions without understanding the long-term implications.
And not unique to Radnor Township. Every municipality.
Not unique to Radnor Township.
What's Philadelphia's number? $5.5
Yeah,
billion?
I mean, when you get into the big cities, the numbers are so staggering, they stop having meaning. They start being concepts. Because they, quite frankly, could never be resolved.
And I thought you were going to say storm sewers.
Well, that's a growing issue. We're spending a lot of money on that now. We're spending upwards of $1 million a year on that.
Well, we were all just assessed.
Yes, yes. So that's a little different. I see that's going to fit into it. We created a $1 million box. And now our job is to go out and to be as efficient as we can with that $1 million. So.
What's the best way, Don, for people who, in this particular instance, the Willows, for example, those who are for or against the proposal, what's the best way for them to express their views? How do they contact you or others in the township to let them know how they feel?
Sure. All the commissioners' contact information is on the website. And again, to a man and a woman, every one of them is going to respond to you. So contact your commissioner, let them know your opinions, and we'll go from there.
Is that the best way to reach you?
Email? Email works. My phone number is also on the website.
What's your email address?
It's on the township website, dcurley@radnor.org.
Okay.
So, and local government, I mean, I've returned every call I've gotten. I've responded to every email. So there's no difficulty accessing the 7 commissioners.
Well, thank you for your service, truly, for what you and your colleagues do. It's a tough job. It really is. It's a tough job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and trying to shed some light on this thorny issue. If you have an opinion one way or the other about the Willows and the Willows Mansion, please take Don Curley's advice and contact him or your commissioner on the board. Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourselves.